They asked me to train my replacement. I didn't question it at the time. New hire, fresh MBA, standard onboarding. I spent 8 weeks teaching her everything. How to trace shell companies through layered registrations, how to spot timing anomalies in transaction records, how to read the spaces between numbers where the real story hides. She took careful notes, asked good questions. I thought I was doing my job. I was writing my own exit script. The morning my boss called me into his office, she wasn't at her desk. Neither was anyone from HR. Just Richard, standing by the window with his back to me. "Marcus, we're restructuring the audit division," he said without turning around. "Your position is being eliminated. We'll need you to wrap up by Friday." I remember the sound of traffic below. 13 floors down, people were going about their day, unaware that mine had just ended. "Understood," I said. "My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 47 years old. And until that moment, I'd spent 14 years as the lead forensic accountant at Crestwood Financial Group in Portland, Oregon. I found discrepancies others missed. I caught errors before they became scandals. I was careful, methodical, invisible, which is probably why they thought I wouldn't notice. Richard turned then, surprise flickering across his face. I think he expected anger, questions, maybe a plea for reconsideration. Instead, I nodded once and walked out. Claire was at her desk when I returned. She didn't meet my eyes. I spent the rest of that week documenting my active cases, transferring files, explaining nuances to Claire that she wrote down in her careful handwriting. On Friday afternoon, I packed my personal items into a single cardboard box. A photo of my daughter's college graduation. A coffee mug from a forensic accounting conference in Chicago. The small brass scale my late father gave me when I passed my CPA exam. Security escorted me to the parking garage. Standard protocol for departing employees in positions with sensitive access. They were polite about it, almost apologetic. What they didn't know, what Richard didn't know, what no one at Crestwood knew, was that I'd been working on something for the past 6 months. Not an official case. Something I'd stumbled across while reviewing expense reports for a routine compliance audit. A pattern. Small consulting payments to a firm called Northbridge Advisory Services. Always just under the threshold that would trigger executive approval. Recurring monthly, but irregular amounts. The kind of thing that looks normal until you map it against other data points. I'd flagged it internally twice. Both times, Richard told me it had been reviewed and approved at a higher level. Both times, he suggested I focus on my assigned cases. So I did focus on my assigned cases. But I also kept a separate file, one not stored on company servers. Call it professional curiosity. Call it thoroughness. Call it the habit of someone who spent 14 years learning to trust numbers more than explanations. The weekend after my termination, I sat in my home office with that file open on my laptop. My daughter Emma was visiting from Seattle, asleep in her old room down the hall. The house was quiet except for the rain against the windows, that distinctive Portland sound I'd grown up with. I pulled up the Northbridge payments again, traced the business registration to a small office in Vancouver, Washington. No website, no employee listings, just a mailing address and a registered agent. Then I cross-referenced the payment dates with internal emails I'd archived over the years. A picture emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in chemicals. Every Northbridge payment corresponded to a specific type of transaction at Crestwood. Estate settlements, probate cases, situations where clients were dealing with inherited wealth, often confused, often trusting whatever the firm recommended. The payments weren't for consulting services. They were referral fees. Crestwood was steering clients toward Northbridge, which was then charging those clients inflated rates for services like asset liquidation and estate organization. Services Crestwood could have provided in-house for standard fees. It was legal, technically, but it violated the fiduciary standards Crestwood claimed to uphold. And it hadn't been disclosed to clients, which crossed into different territory. I dug deeper. Found the incorporation documents for Northbridge. The principal owner was listed as Diane Chun, Richard's sister-in-law. I leaned back in my chair, watching rain trace patterns down the dark window. Somewhere in the house, a pipe creaked as the heating kicked on. For 14 years, I'd been the person who found problems and reported them through proper channels. The person who trusted that bringing attention to irregularities would lead to correction, not elimination. I'd been naive. Monday morning, I didn't look for a new job. Instead, I began building a comprehensive map of every Northbridge transaction I could access. My credentials had been revoked, but I still had months of archived emails and documents I'd legally downloaded for work purposes before my termination. 47 cases over 3 years. Nearly $600,000 in referral fees that clients never knew existed. Each case involved people in vulnerable positions, grieving, overwhelmed, trusting the advisors they'd hired to protect their interests. I thought about reaching out to Crestwood's board. Thought about calling the state licensing board. Thought about a lot of direct approaches. Then I remembered Claire's careful notes. The way she'd written down everything I taught her about tracing financial relationships, about building evidence chains, about staying invisible until the pattern was undeniable. She'd learned from the best. Tuesday, I created a new email account. Sent a message to Claire with a simple question. Did they tell you why they really needed my position eliminated? She didn't respond. I hadn't expected her to. Wednesday, I contacted David Park, a journalist I'd worked with years ago on a story about municipal fraud. We'd stayed in loose touch, occasional emails, nothing substantial. "Marcus," he said when he answered. "Long time. How's Crestwood treating you?" "I'm actually not there anymore," I said. "Which is why I'm calling." We met at a coffee shop in Northwest Portland. I brought printed spreadsheets, registration documents, email transcripts. Laid them out across the table, like pieces of a puzzle. David studied them in silence, occasionally making notes in a small notebook he carried everywhere. "This is solid," he said finally. "But I need something more. Someone on record, preferably a client who can speak to not being informed about the referral relationship." "I can't provide client names," I said. "Confidentiality restrictions still apply even after termination." "But the clients themselves could come forward," David said slowly. "If they knew there was something to come forward about." I nodded. He looked at me carefully. "This is personal for you." "It's principle," I said. "They built a system to extract money from vulnerable people. Then they eliminated the one person who was close to figuring it out." "Revenge is principle wearing a 3-piece suit," David observed. I didn't disagree. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with David to build the story. He filed public records requests. Found additional cases I hadn't identified. Tracked down 3 former Crestwood clients who confirmed they'd been steered toward Northbridge without understanding the financial relationship. One was a widow in her 70s who'd paid Northbridge $18,000 to liquidate her husband's coin collection. Services she later learned could have been handled for a fraction of that cost. Another was a man whose mother had died unexpectedly. Crestwood connected him with Northbridge to organize the estate sale. He was charged $12,000 for work he later realized consisted mostly of hiring subcontractors. These weren't catastrophic amounts. That was the genius of it. Each case was just small enough that people shrugged and moved on, assuming this was how things worked. But they added up, and none of it had been disclosed. If you're finding this story interesting, consider subscribing. There's more coming, and not all of it is what you'd expect. David's article ran on a Thursday morning. It was thorough, carefully sourced, devastating in its simplicity. It named Richard, named Northbridge, connected the familial relationship, quoted clients who felt betrayed. By Thursday afternoon, Crestwood's communications director had issued a statement claiming the referral arrangement had been appropriate and properly disclosed. By Friday, that statement had been revised twice as more details emerged. I didn't watch it unfold in real time. I was hiking in Forest Park when the story broke, phone turned off, walking the trails my daughter and I used to explore when she was young. When I finally checked messages that evening, there were 17 voicemails. Reporters, former colleagues, a lawyer from Crestwood asking me to call urgently. I deleted them all except one. Emma had texted, "Dad, I saw the article. Are you okay?" I replied, "I'm good. Dinner this weekend." The state licensing board opened an investigation within a week. The board of directors at Crestwood announced Richard had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. Northbridge Advisory Services quietly shut down its operations. None of this brought me satisfaction exactly. More like confirmation. The numbers had been telling a story all along. It just took someone willing to listen to them. 3 months after the article ran, I received a call from a law firm in Seattle. They specialized in forensic accounting for legal cases, needed someone to lead their Portland office. We read about the Crestwood situation, the managing partner said. Impressive work, even if it cost you your position. It cost me more than that, I said. It taught me something about whose interests I should be protecting. They offered me the role. Better title, better pay, autonomy to build my own team. I negotiated one additional term. Any case of potential wrongdoing we uncover gets reported immediately, regardless of who it implicates or what the business consequences might be. They agreed. I started the new position on a Monday morning, appropriately enough. My office overlooks the Willamette River, water gray and steady, moving towards something inevitable. On my desk, I kept the brass scale my father gave me. It sits next to a photograph of Emma, taken on that weekend hike last fall. Both of us smiling at the summit, the city spreading out below us. Claire sent me a LinkedIn request last month. I didn't accept or decline, just left it pending. Some questions don't need immediate answers. Richard, according to mutual acquaintances, took a position with a financial firm in California. Smaller company, lower profile, carefully omitting recent history from his professional bio. He's working under supervision, requirements of his settlement with the licensing board. The clients David interviewed for his article? 2 of them recovered partial settlements from Northbridge's remaining assets. The widow with the coin collection received $8,000. Not full restitution, but something. The man whose mother died got $5,500. Small victories measured in money that should never have been taken. I don't talk about what happened at Crestwood much. When new colleagues ask why I left my previous position, I give simple answers. Restructuring, timing, opportunity. But sometimes, when I'm reviewing a particularly complex case, finding patterns in spreadsheets that tell stories about choices people made when they thought no one was watching, I think about Claire taking notes at the desk beside mine. I taught her to read numbers, to trace relationships, to understand that accounting isn't just mathematics, it's narrative. I wonder if she remembers those lessons. If she thinks about them when she signs off on expense reports, approves transactions, makes the small decisions that accumulate into a career. I wonder if she understands what she learned. The office where I work now has a view of 3 bridges crossing the river. Steel and concrete, built to carry weight, built to last. At night, they're lit from below, reflected in dark water, steady in all weather. Some structures collapse under scrutiny. Others grow stronger when exposed to light. I built my career on knowing the difference. Last week, Emma called from Seattle. She's considering leaving her marketing job, going back to school for something that feels more meaningful. We talked for over an hour about purpose, about compromises, about knowing when to stay and when to leave. You sound different, she said eventually. Since everything happened. Not bad different. Just settled. I think I finally stopped waiting for permission, I told her, to do what needed doing. After we hung up, I sat at my desk looking out at the bridges, at the water moving steadily beneath them. Somewhere in this city, Richard is building a new professional life. Claire is probably closing out monthly reports. David is working on his next story. And I'm exactly where I need to be. Not because I planned some perfect revenge. Not because I orchestrated some brilliant downfall. But because when I saw a pattern that troubled me, I didn't look away. When they tried to silence me by elimination, I found a different way to speak. The numbers don't lie. They just wait for someone patient enough to listen. I'm very patient. If this story resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe. These stories matter because they're true in the ways that count.